You're listening to Brave by Design, Episode 4, The Traits of a Great Manager, Part 2 of 2. Welcome to Brave by Design. I'm your host, Laura Khalil. I'm an entrepreneur, coach, and speaker. I love thinking big, exploring the power of personal development, and sharing the best strategies from thought leaders and pioneers in business to empower ambitious women and allies to bravely rise and thrive. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I am your host, Laura Khalil, and I want to start the show by giving a huge thanks to those of you who have reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts. Believe it or not, that actually does help other people discover the show. I was absolutely thrilled to go on there and see that we had 6 5-star reviews. So thank you. And I want to read some of the written reviews we had received. This one from BChick01, love the username. They say, great nuggets of info packed into a concise podcast that can easily fit into my day, presented in a no BS way that really speaks to me. As a woman who works in the male-dominated IT field, you had me at episode 1. Looking forward to hearing more. Well, thank you so much for being here. And we also have this review from I'm Not Bossy, I'm the Boss. And they write, this speaks to the soul. First of all, I'm not bossy, I'm the boss. That needs to be every woman's mantra, okay? That is brilliant. And friends, I am so glad that you are feeling the show. Because one of my goals was, and one of the challenges that I have is I want to bring my whole self into the show. Those of you who know me personally, and as I realize as our audience grows, I think now we're over 300 downloads on the show, just in the first 3 episodes. And I realize that as my audience grows, I don't know a lot of you personally, but I still want to bring myself to the show. And some of you who know me know I love comedy, I love humor, I love real talk, and I do love that no BS style. And so I'm glad that some of that is coming across because I didn't want to create yet another business podcast. I wanted to create something that really is fun, informative, educational, and inspirational. And so I really do hope that that will continue to shine through. I also have a special offer for you. So if you do not want 2020 to be like 2019, 2018, 2017, and are ready to effect profound change in your life, and nothing less than that, I want you to join me for the group coaching I'm offering. So this is for people who feel stuck at a certain part of their career, or maybe you're not sure what your next steps are. You may be ready for a career transition and you want to feel inspired, energized, and get clarity on where you are going. I will be teaching my methodology on how to get crystal clear, and we will be designing your life and roadmap together to achieve your 2020 vision and where you want to go for the next decade. This is a quarterly group coaching program. It kicks off on February 22nd, and you will be working directly with me in a small group over Zoom. This is a great option for people who cannot afford the investment of one-on-one coaching, but want to experience the profound effects of the work that I do. You can learn more about this at forceofbadassery.com. And the early bird pricing for this ends on February 13th. All right, in today's episode, we are going to continue our discussion from episode 3 with Heidi Kron about the traits of a great manager. If you have not listened to the first part, please go back and listen to that because she is dropping nuggets of wisdom all over the podcast. And that is the same with part 2. It is absolutely brilliant.
We often say that trust isn't given, it's earned. Now, you did say something interesting right now. You said, I trust my employees to actually be able to do their job, like you're not looking over their shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
how can managers continue to foster trust and build more trust with their staff?
I honestly think for me, the best way I know how to do that is to be vulnerable and show them that I'm human. I think as a manager or as managers, we tend to want to earn people's confidence by sending the message that we have it all together, right? And the truth is, like, we don't always have it all together, and we're learning. So, especially when I joined ClearCover, this is something that I had thought a lot about over the last several years. I started and said, like, here's where I tend to struggle as a leader. And like, for example, this is a weird example, but I'm going to give it because it's just which is that my thinking face is like comes across as a scowl or like
Uh-oh.
a frowning face. And I had an employee in the past who was like, "You were looking at me like I'm stupid." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," I felt so bad because I never ever thought this person was stupid. And that's something that is hard for me and that I have to work on. And when you add to that the fact that I tend to be very direct with people, and I prefer that people are direct with me, I can sometimes give the impression of like being harsh, thinking people are dumb, which is terrible. So like right out of the gate, when I met my team at ClearCover, I was like, "Hey, uh, like I tend to do this. It is not like it is just me thinking. So I'm gonna ask you to like assume positive intent.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not sure, ask me. And but also you can trust that if there is something that I think is amiss, I will talk to you about it, and I will be very clear. You don't have to wonder what I'm thinking. So I think being vulnerable is really important, and when you set that tone, people are able to be more vulnerable with you. And so, it opens up the door to consistent communication, openness among people. Sometimes, I've had employees who had newly entered sobriety or struggling with pretty serious mental health issues. It could have come across as they just weren't doing their work or they were performing poorly. But we are all human beings. There's no way to fully separate those parts of our lives from work. And so
Absolutely. There just is
being
not.
right. And so
Yeah.
being vulnerable with folks right out of the gate makes it safer for them to be vulnerable with you to say, you know what, I'm entering into recovery and I'm struggling right now and I'm a little bit distracted, and it's not that I'm not, still happy with my job or whatever, but I'm asking you to, you know,
Be aware.
extra patient and aware with
Yeah.
me right now, right? And it's like, oh, you're like, I'm a human being. Like, of
Yeah.
course, like I understand, and we all have things that we go through, but you can't have those conversations unless you've built that trust. And I think for me, vulnerability has been the best way. And also to just be consistent and ask how employees want to receive feedback and then honor that. I think showing up to one-on-ones is something that a lot of managers don't do, which is just, come on, like there are easy ways to just show up and
Mhm.
be consistent and be a force that is reliable for people. That is going to earn folks trust a lot faster than
Well,
like a
yeah,
trust fall exercise.
right, exactly.
It's actually pretty, these are
And
pretty simple things.
I always say you get what you give.
Yes.
So if
Oh,
you're
yes.
if you're creating an environment of secrecy and where you don't share anything, and that doesn't mean necessarily talking about your personal life, but
Right.
sharing about how you work, sharing about how you're feeling about things, sharing what's going on, why would you expect an employee to feel safe to reciprocate? Furthermore, I love this example you gave about an employee who may be going through a personal challenge, such as recovery, such as mental health issues, and that they feel safe enough that you're not going to go run to HR.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge because there are people out there who really are scared that if I tell you I'm going through a divorce, a custody battle, or, any kind of personal issue, that HR is going to get involved and you're going to
Right.
start being monitored.
Right. Exactly. And it's not good for anybody, right? And if they can't tell you those things, you're just sitting there like, oh my, okay, they were late to work again. I have to put them on a performance plan, or I have
Right.
to have this harsh conversation with them when, behind the curtains, something really, really
Something's going on.
toxic or hard is going on that you would prefer to support them through, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you only knew that. But
Mm-hmm.
as you said, like you have to give in order to get. And I think something else you said is really important. You don't need to probe into people's lives, right? But just doing the basics of like if someone takes off early to go to their kids, you know, choral concert, ask them the next day how it was. Like
Yeah.
show that you care about them as a human being. People are not machines, they are people. You know, the golden rule: treat people how you want to be treated. Give in order to get. That's so
Absolutely.
perfect. That's
It
going to be my
is.
new catchphrase.
Okay, so we have talked about like having, being open, being vulnerable with employees, being willing to listen. What happens when you have to have a really difficult conversation? Let's say you're putting someone on a performance improvement plan, or maybe you're afraid that you might have to do that,
Mm.
and you need to confront some behavior, um, or performance that is affecting the team. How do you have those types of difficult conversations?
Mm. I would say I've done some of this well and some of this not so well. And the things that have gone not so well stemmed from not having set clear expectations up front, and then not having had clear, consistent conversations on an ongoing basis where the employee really understood the concerns that I had about their performance. And so I think that was a lesson learned for me earlier in my career. You do have to have those conversations, asking them how they want to receive feedback, and um, be consistent about them on an ongoing basis, or someone's going to be surprised. And
Hmm.
as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to like performance, no one ever wants to be surprised.
Right.
um, like you just want to be able to have pretty normal conversations on an ongoing basis. So if you're doing that, and you're using some kind of a tool that is collaborative, like you're not just keeping notes somewhere that only you have access to in a Word doc about how someone is performing, but instead maybe you're using a Google Doc and you both contribute to that Google Doc. Or at ClearCover, we use Lattice, and both managers and employees contribute to those check-ins every single week. When all of that is there and at the surface, there shouldn't be surprises, right? When someone
Right.
is really missing the mark. And the goal there is that when you reach a point where you have to put somebody on a performance plan, it's like, okay, well, when I look back at our last 6 one-on-ones, 4 of them, we had to talk about uh, like your timeliness or something,
Hmm.
some kind of KPI or important critical metric that you're measuring. Um,
And I
Hard for
just
the
to,
employee to dispute that, right? Like you have to,
yeah.
like that's just kind of talking about a fact that has been accepted and discussed for a while. And it makes that conversation a lot easier. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that in addition to that, something you mentioned earlier about being direct. So when there is a challenge, we don't need to blow it necessarily out of the water, but also not minimizing it. So there are certain managers who will want to avoid conflict, so they will attempt to minimize it. And that can appear in many forms. But one form can be like, hey, it's the end of the meeting. We have 20 seconds left. We have 20 seconds left, and saying something like, oh, by the way, like just wanted to bring, this up as we're walking out the door. And it's like, well,
Right.
is that important?
Right.
You
Right.
know, does that matter that I'm not timely if you're bringing it up in such a casual manner? So I also think
Exactly.
how you share the message is really important. And I always say, have the tough conversations first. Like, get
Hmm.
it out of the way. And because you, like you said, you don't know what's going on with these people. Like, we have no
Right.
idea. Maybe they're late. If timeliness is important to your business, why are they not being timely? Let's get to the bottom of that.
Right.
Let's create an environment where they feel comfortable to talk about that and not
Yeah.
scared to bring it up. So,
Yeah. It could be uh, mom and dad are separated, and now mom has to do the morning school drop off every day. Right. And so they've been having a harder time adjusting to the new schedule and
yep.
getting to work. Oh, okay, that's really helpful to know. Well, here are some ideas that I have. Maybe we shift your schedule a little bit later, maybe whatever that is. Or we just set a goal that you're in your new routine within a week or
Yeah.
something. But like you said, you cannot have that conversation if you're not being direct about it. And I would say that's where I struggled as well, earlier on in my managing responsibilities, is I don't want to hurt people's feelings, right? And
Yeah.
so you can have these conversations and come across as like too delicate about an issue that is
Yep.
actually really important. And I think that is where vulnerability and trust are so important, because if people know that you care about them as human beings and they know how much you're fighting for them in their career journey, and that you are always looking for opportunities for them to grow, then they will understand that you care about them and probably not take whatever direct insight you have about their performance so personally, as like, I'm personally offended by this. How
Exactly.
much you care, right? But you have to establish that foundation, and that's hard, especially, that's um, candidly something that I'm navigating at Career Cover as a manager who was hired after a team was built, right? So, my team is having to adjust to kind of the change of the guard. And
Yeah.
they're learning how I am as a leader, and I'm kind of learning what their expectations are, and we had to do a little bit of a reset. Um, but for me, like I said, it's all about, we're resetting so that I can help you grow, and I'm going to, in turn, expect that you're invested in the company's growth as well, and we're going to get there together. And the only way we get there is together. So you're either like on the ship or not, but the
Hmm.
ship is like, it's sailing. And so
You're their partner.
yeah, I'll be your captain and like tell you where to row or move the sail or whatever. I know nothing about ships, like, clearly, but I don't think many boats have captains and paddles. I don't know,
No,
maybe,
they do have
but
captains.
really, oh my gosh, oh, gosh,
It's going to be a really slow moving boat, though, if we're paddling
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Someone needs to
um,
get in the engine room.
yes, yes, but like, we're gonna get there together, but you have to want to be in this boat, right? And you have to want
Absolutely.
to be a better rower. Like, I can't make you want to be here, but if you want to be here, I can help you keep, you know, growing, and I don't know, I'm gonna say
Yeah.
like stronger arms for paddling. I don't know, but I will help you.
One of the things that I always say, I think I said this to your team as well, is when we talk about this fear of not of hurting someone's feelings. I mean, certainly we don't want to be crass with people or careless,
Hmm.
but I always go back to clear is kind.
Hmm.
The the
Oh, Brene
most,
Brown.
I know, the most difficult thing we can do is be obscure, um, talk out of both sides of our mouth, and confuse people. And it's not kind. In my world, softening language to the point of confusion or ambiguity is really unkind, because eventually nothing's been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problem most likely will perpetuate, whatever that is. And people don't know. They don't know what you don't tell them. End of day. They just don't. Um, so I advocate for that, because I think that, the opposite of being nice isn't being rude. And I think that's where we kind of get confused. The opposite of being nice is really connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, on being that vulnerable, bringing that vulnerability in, that's connecting. That's tough. It is tough to have a direct conversation.
It
It
is
is
tough.
probably the hardest thing we can do.
You're exactly right. And I think for me, the way that I've tried to tie that back to make it extra clear in those moments why it matters and help people feel more secure is make sure I'm clear with them about how, going back to the timeliness example, how their being late is undermining their own success and the success of the team and the
Yep.
success of the company. It's not just about like you broke a rule. I'm not really about rules. If they're arbitrary, like okay, next. Like I'm not gonna worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something that is ultimately undermining their success or has an impact on their teammates or is undermining the company's success, usually probably all three, I make sure that they understand that's why we're having this conversation, right? And I want to look out for you. I want to make sure that you have a successful relationship with your colleagues. I want to make sure that, I have no problems going to bat for you along, the path of your growth, whether that's getting you a raise or getting you a promotion or whatever. But I can't do that if you're not here and other people notice that you're not here and they're like, oh, you promoted somebody who's always late. Like,
Yeah,
I can't do that in good conscience, right?
exactly.
So I think tying it back and showing how it is in the employee's best interest makes having those direct conversations that are tough a little bit easier as well, more palatable for the employee.
Thank you, Heidi. One question I want to ask you is about for women who are interested in management. We all know, and I know you've been there, and God knows I was there when I worked full time, of situations where a woman is literally asked to prove and show over a period of time that they can do the job that they want to get, rather than being promoted on potential, which is what we know from the research is how many men are promoted.
Yeah.
So, what do you advise for those women?
So I guess this is my take on this. I'm kind of, regardless of gender, I'm pretty anti promoting on potential, just because I think there's a lot of risk in that would set the employee up for failure as well. I think unless you are 80-90% sure that someone is, really going to crush it in a role, they're probably not ready for that role. And that's where I say, like, I trust that they're just going to do their job because I'm quite confident that they're able to do their job. So I don't like the idea of promoting on potential. However, if someone is looking to promote for any type of role, I do think it's important to be able to demonstrate your skill set. Now, that might mean you haven't done that exact job before, right? So
Right.
maybe um, that's where kind of like potential comes in a way that's really palatable for me, which is I have all of the skills to do this job, and I've applied those skills differently, but I'm going to show you exactly how I've applied them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to demonstrate, like, let's say it's a woman wanting to be a manager. being able to show how you've mentored other people, that could be inside of work or outside of work, um, a coach on a team, like you said, a manager is a coach, a tutorer, anything like that, where you are personally invested in another person's success and growth. Like those are great ways to say, like, I have already demonstrated this skill set and I already know how to do this job. So you can promote me, which is easier for the company usually than trying to hire somebody from outside of it. Um, but maybe you haven't done those things yet. I would say this is a great time to like show your ambition and show your drive and get very strategic and tactical about it, where you could go to your manager. First of all, like tell your manager that you want to become a manager.
Right.
Right? Like you have to declare it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't do that because they're afraid to like rock the boat by saying that they want more than what they're already getting, or that they're afraid to give the impression that they're unhappy in their current role
Yep.
and therefore they're looking for a different one. But I think positioning or framing that conversation within the light of I'm like really loving my work and I would love to help more people do similar work. I'm thinking about my growth steps, and I would really like to get on a path to becoming a manager. And start ask your manager what resources exist for you, if they have any mentors that they would recommend for you or a sponsor within the organization to kind of be that like coach in that very specific way.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that you say a lot, Laura, which is like figure out who you want to become and figure out how you want to be, like what you need to do to get there, right? To become that person. So talk to managers you admire, figure out what you can learn from them,
Exactly.
read
You
the books
have,
that they've read or written.
yeah, it's acting like the person you want to be, right?
Yes,
Because
yes,
you acting like yourself has gotten you to this point, which is great. But the current you needs to learn and grow and develop a additional, sort of mindset to get to the next spot. And
mm-hmm.
that's why we hire coaches. That's why we work with great managers. That's why we read books, as you're suggesting, on the things that we want to become so that we can actually embody those skills. So you have to embody the skills, embody the mindset of what would a CEO do in this situation? What would a director do? What would a manager do? And then start showing that you have those skills and people will notice.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think even if it's maybe you're preparing to become a team leader, maybe you're not jumping into manager, you're saying I want to become a team leader. What would my management strategy look like? Define what that is, like weekly one-on-ones. What would you ask in the one-on-ones? What would you expect in the one-on, like
Yep.
creating some clear outlines of what that would look like. And then going back to your manager and saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking I would love to do. Is there an intern or that I can maybe lead for the summer? Or
Mm-hmm.
the next person we hire, could I train them and kind of get them spun up? You can start showing that you're learning to walk the talk. And if your manager has seen you do all of these things and is the coach advocate that ideally a manager is, I think it's a lot easier for like you have there like demonstrated not just your potential, but you've demonstrated your ability.
Heidi, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today. If people want to connect with you further, how can they find you?
Ooh, find me on Twitter at Heidi Cron, HEIDICRAUN, or you can look me up on LinkedIn too. But
Awesome.
thank you for having me, Laura.
Oh
I
my gosh, my
blabbered
pleasure.
your ear off for a million hours. I could talk about this stuff all day.
I'm so glad that we got to have some of your wisdom shared with the audience because I just think it's really inspiring to hear from a woman leader. And, you know, I want to try and help pump you up and share your message as much as I can.
Hey, thank you. A lot of it's been learned the hard way. So if anybody can, step over some of the potholes that I've fallen into, that would make me very happy.
I want to thank you for joining me, and remember to subscribe through your favorite app so you can stay up to date. And I would love your review. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and comment on Apple Podcasts. You can also keep in touch with me online. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Instagram at Force of Badassery. All that information will be available in the show notes. Until next time, stay brave.